The Chicago Bears struggles continued yesterday in a loss to the New Orleans Saints. We're going to go over my takeaways from the game, who stood out, who didn't, all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host here, Haize, holding it down for C-Dub and Bobby. Make sure you guys are following the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. You guys know, every Monday we kind of come back after the game and I give my takeaways from the game, just kind of going through some things, through my thoughts on the game, even though we did have the post-game show. So if you want to hear our immediate thoughts as a crew, make sure you guys go check out the post-game show that was done live after the game. We're live every Sunday after the game, so make sure you guys hit that subscribe button if you want to be notified every time we go live. With that being said, though, let's talk about some of the players that stood out the most in a positive way. We'll talk about the negative here towards the bottom end of it. But first up, I want to talk about somebody who is near and dear to Chicago Bears Central, especially C-Dub, one of the co-hosts here, and that is Jack Sanborn. And I think when you look at the play that Jack Sanborn had and the way that he's just a playmaker, right? And the Bears moved him from middle linebacker to being on the outside with the acquisition of Tremaine Edmonds. And I tell you what, seeing him play, especially because we did end up going out and drafting Noah Sewell as well, who hasn't made a big impact this season, but I do really look favorably upon, his future here with the Bears. Jack Sanborn maybe have just proven that maybe the Chicago Bears should have trusted him a little bit more to hold down that middle linebacker position. Still go after TJ Edwards, still draft Noah Sewell. Of course, everything's in hindsight, but in just one game, starting at the middle linebacker position, Jack Sanborn brought so much of what we identify as a Chicago Bears middle linebacker in that game. He just played an excellent game, and it was good to see Jack Sanborn have that type of impact with the way that the season has gone. Jack Sanborn with 9 total tackles, 7 of those being solo, 2 of them being assisted. But outside of just that, it was the plays, not just the numbers. You had to watch the game to see how, where, when, how he fought through defenders as well. Jack Sanborn had an excellent game yesterday for the Chicago Bears, and one that, listen, as a lifelong Bears fan, I look at Jack Sanborn, he still feels like a Chicago Bears middle linebacker. He just did 10 tackles, 10 of them, only second to TJ Edwards, who's been an absolute dog today. And and when you look at the Bears as well, and some of the things that have been ailing the Bears so far this season, like the lack of tackling, right? Just the weak arm tackles, things like that. Jack Sanborn does not show any of that. Jack Sanborn is an absolute dog. And I love to watch Jack Sanborn play. And so, listen, it definitely brings the questions of why the Chicago Bears spent that money on Tremaine Edmonds, and maybe they should have trusted their undrafted rookie in Jack Sanborn a little bit more, because, listen, he was an absolute stud in yesterday's game. Another one, listen, D'Onta Foreman. D'Onta Foreman has just proven for everybody who's like I said, and we said this all throughout the start of the season, that while he was a healthy scratch, please do not mistake that for somebody who's unable to compete at the NFL level. D'Onta Foreman had 82 yards on 20 carries, averaging 4.2 yards per carry. He is an absolute monster. He's been a monster since he started playing for the Chicago Bears, and they actually started bringing him out. So good to see him as well, just have the type of game that, again, you wanted to see. And you knew that we were excited about him when they signed him, right? We were extremely excited. Of course, we didn't know that the Bears were going to go out and be able to draft somebody like Roschon Johnson, who is still probably the future number 1 for the Chicago Bears overall. But listen, D'Onta Foreman is another dog on this team, and one that I really appreciate just the way that he plays. And another player that we got to talk about that stood out as well is Darnell Mooney. It's been a pretty quiet season for Darnell Mooney, right? But he had 85 yards on 5 receptions, and he showed again the playmaker that he can be. And so while, when it comes down to Darnell Mooney, and we'll talk about this as we get close to the end of the season, depending on what the Bears plan to do with some of their first-round picks, I do think there's a chance that Mooney may be gone, right? I do think that they may let him walk away, especially if they're able to draft somebody like a Marvin Harrison Jr. and maybe trust a Tyler Scott to be able to step in. But at the end of the day, listen, Darnell Mooney can be a playmaker. It's a reason why he's here, and we've seen him when he's not relied as on the number 1 option, what he can do for a team. And so, he showed a little bit of that yesterday as, the Saints were really trying to zero in on DJ Moore, who didn't really have a big night at all. Now, one could say DJ Moore hasn't really had a big connection with Tyson Bagent, so maybe that plays into it. He had 3 receptions for 44 yards on 6 targets, so it is what it is. Unfortunately, he Also, DJ Moore had the only non-Tyson Bagent turnover in yesterday's game as well. So, that's one of the players that didn't really stand out. Braxton Jones as well. Listen, I understand he's been out for a long time. I understand that, he's better than Larry Borum, at least on paper. But the penalties, again, he continues to the penalties. 4 false starts on the year. And the one in yesterday's game was absolutely ugly. You almost wonder if Braxton Jones didn't know the playbook, the way that he just completely threw a dud out there with his performance yesterday. But again, it is what it is on that one, man. But another dud that we got to talk about, and player that did not stand out, at least not in a good way, was Tyson Bagent. You got to talk about the night that Tyson Bagent had. The amount of turnovers, the 3 interceptions, the fumble, like it was an ugly night for Tyson Bagent. That still doesn't mean he still has some positives. And I know the Bagent baddies are gonna, still talk about, well, Justin Fields would have did this and that. You guys know. At this point, if you're new here, we don't do the whole Tyson Bagent versus Justin Fields thing. Not something we're interested in doing, because I think both of those of each quarterback have their own promises. But when it comes down to it, Tyson Bagent just didn't have a good game. And it's not all on him. Again, Luke Getsy's play calling, absolutely atrocious. It seemed like the game plan that they came out with, again, absolutely atrocious. Some of the play calling didn't put Tyson Bagent in the best situations or positions either. So, again, I'm not saying that it's all on Tyson Bagent. A lot of it is when you're a quarterback at the NFL level and you have 4 turnovers in a game that was winnable, you're going to get your fair share of the criticism, and that's just stuff that comes with the job, so he's going to have to face that as well. But overall, it sucked to see Tyson Bagent perform in the way that he did. It just is what it is. We'll see what happens if Justin Fields is able to come back against the Carolina Panthers. Already been some talk about that. We'll see. But another player that stood out in a positive way, you got to give Cole Kmet. 6 catches for 55 yards, 2 touchdowns. Listen, that first touchdown as well on the opening drive, beautiful. And it's good to see Cole Kmet, who I think he's like second or third in tight end since the start of last season in touchdown receptions, which we know for a long time. We just didn't get to him in the end zone the way that we needed to. It's good to see Cole Kmet have the day that he did have. And so, you think with better play calling, things like that. And I know we talk a lot about that here with the Chicago Bears, but I think it does come a lot down to it overall as well, is that the Bears, I just think with a better play caller, better coaching, we have some weapons here. I'm not saying we have the greatest weapons, but we do have some weapons that I think just aren't being utilized to the best of their ability because of Luke Getsy. That's my opinion. Luke Getsy, is always, you can just write him in every week as far as a player that, aspect of this team, the coach that just stood out bad. Him and Matt Eberflus just continue to me, strengthen why they both need to get their asses up out of Chicago at the end of the season. And the defense, too. And that goes directly to Eberflus, who's now calling the defensive plays, who's been doing it for the most part of the season. You let a backup quarterback in Hill come in and go 1 for 1 for you to throw a touchdown and go 11 carries for 52 yards on you. That's not going to cut it. That's not going to cut it. So listen, the slide of the defense has been bad. I know a lot of people are going off the fact of, Montez Sweat didn't have the impact that a lot of kind of unreasonable people kind of expected him to have 1 week. Like, he got traded here 5 days ago, right? So you got to be into that. But listen, the defense overall, our inability to get to the quarterback continues to be a problem with this team. And at the end of the day, I just think that Matt Eberflus has to be held accountable for the play of the Chicago Bears. And by accountable, I mean he can't return here. I know some people have been talking recently about scenarios and things in which he may return. And don't get me wrong. I know this is a Chicago Bears franchise, and there's absolutely a possibility, as much as I don't want to admit it, there's a possibility of that coming around. But it's just, you have to move away from him, in my opinion. You guys can continue to let me know what you guys think down below. And one of the things that stick out as well this game is, while we're talking about Luke Getsy, is how we went away from what was working. That continues to be something that we don't see. For example, in the second half, we only ran the ball 12 total times. In the first half of the game, we ran the ball 20 times. We went away from the run, in which the first half we had 20 carries for 105 yards. That's an average of 5 yards, over 5 yards per carry as a team. In the second half of the game, we still had a solid yard per carry. We had 12 carries for 53 yards. We were averaging 4.3, but we went away from the run at a time where we probably needed to go to it a little bit more. And so, yeah, I know we missed that field goal that would have had the game, put us up briefly for a second, but when you look at the second half for the Chicago Bears, the thing that continues to stand out is that teams adjust. If we have success in a quarter, in a half, teams really do adjust to it. And then we're seeing Matt Eberflus and Luke Getsy not know how to adjust to those adjustments, right? We don't make adjustments as a team. And it comes down to it that it's unfortunate. But I think that really puts a highlight on why you need to move away from this coaching. This coaching staff isn't it. And that's not to say that there still isn't some big time concerns on the roster as well overall, but you gotta give it a chance, man. Like this coaching staff just ain't it, man. And I hate to say that, but it just ain't it. And when you look at things that just don't, like, on top of things that don't need a return next year, the Velus Jones experiment has to stop. The Velus Jones has been one of the worst picks by Ryan Poles overall, outside of giving away what became, the second round pick, which was almost a first round pick for Chase Claypool that turned into nothing. This pick of Velus Jones and passing on some of the wide receivers we passed and then going with him, I get it. We wouldn't have Jaquan Brisker. We wouldn't have Kyler Gordon. So there's something to be said with that. And if we get Marvin Harrison Jr., for example, in this offseason, all that's a wash. But at the end of the day, Velus is just, he ain't it either. And he needs to go. The experiment has to stop. It has to stop. And so our coverage needs work. Again, we continue to see that we are a better team in man-style coverage. We still run very minimal man-style lineups and stuff like that. So I know zone coverage is always going to be a thing. It's always going to be a thing. You can never fully eliminate it as a team in the NFL. But I think ultimately, when you look at it, we are a better team in man coverage, and we just don't run it enough. And that is Matt Eberflus' system. And so as we continue to do that, it's going to continue to stand out as a negative with the Chicago Bears team. And let's hope that we're able to turn it around as far as with a new coach. To me, I'm over this coaching staff. I'm over what they potentially could bring or anything like that. And it's time to move on. Now, with that said, it's not a guarantee as of yet, but it does seem like things are starting to move and progress towards Justin Fields possibly being available this Thursday as we face the Carolina Panthers, since we do have a short week for Week 10. And with the performance of Tyson Bagent, get to see Justin Fields out there if he's healthy. And Matt Eberflus has already said it. At the end of the day, if Justin Fields is healthy, he's the QB1. And hopefully he's able to get healthy. We can see this team. And hopefully, is it going to fix anything? Not necessarily at this point. I think at this point, the Chicago Bears, being 2-7, need to focus more on gearing up towards what they're going to do in the draft and how they're going to try to start improving this roster. But there's still absolutely players and aspects that need to be evaluated. As we're getting that offensive line healthy, we need to be able to see what they're going to look like, to see what we need to do. And I tell you what, with Braxton Jones, I would not mind if the Bears go ahead and draft another player at his position. There are some really good left tackles coming up in this draft that could help the Chicago Bears. And if they do end up going that direction, I don't think it's bad. At the bare minimum, you're going to, even if Braxton does work himself out of it, you're getting a good young depth piece at that point. But I think center, tackle, another edge in the draft, wide receiver, if Marvin Harrison Jr. is there when they pick, things like that, is kind of where they need to gear up towards. But we'll talk about that as we move forward towards the end of the season, as we start gearing up our draft coverage. But let me know anything of your thoughts down below. As always, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Chicago Bears Central. Make sure you guys are following the show at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, chicagobearscentral@gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bears related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, but Bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.